Hello. Tonight, this is just going to be a short update as I have some other things going on in my day job life. Let's talk about some reports today of some Black Hawk helicopters, American Black Hawk helicopters, perhaps turning their transponders off and flying into Ukrainian airspace. Allegedly to rescue American special forces mercenaries who may have been staying in Kramatorsk. So reports have come out today on both sides, Western and Russian sides of the media, of a missile or bomb attack, probably a missile attack, on a hotel or restaurant in Kramatorsk. This has been accompanied by some interesting video footage of some men wearing or bearing tattoos of what appear to be the US 3rd Airborne Battalion, who are part of the 75th Ranger Regiment. Now, the 3rd Ranger Battalion, they're currently based at Fort Moore, which was once called Fort Benning in Georgia, in the States. And while it's not unheard of for mercenaries to be in Ukraine, fighting for the Ukrainians, it is unusual for the Russians to have targeted a hotel like this and for there to be American mercenaries as casualties of this attack. So this clearly hasn't been a random or just a wanton attack with a missile onto a hotel. This appears to have been a targeted attack on a hotel where American mercenaries have been housed. Western media is obviously showing pictures of children who are damaged, reporting deaths, but are failing to also report upon the fact that there's video footage of, as I say, people speaking in English, groups of people there speaking English, not speaking Ukraine, as you would imagine if they were Ukrainian, and with these allegations of these tattoos of the 3rd Airborne Ranger Battalion. They're a unique tattoo. They're a big red diamond with a number 3 in the middle of them. To have a tattoo like this and not be part of the Rangers, I think would be unusual. I think that you would at least be trying to appear to be affiliated with them if you did have such a tattoo. And one of the casualties of the attack outside of the building with debris all around and covered in blood appeared to, either he or the person assisting him appeared to have this tattoo. So the 3rd Ranger Battalion are a special forces operation. Their primary tasks, as it's described on a website, is for direct action, airfield seizure, special reconnaissance, airborne and air assault activities, and personnel recovery. The Kramatorsk area in Donetsk is not too far away from Bakhmut, Artyomsk, that area where there's been heavy fighting going on over the last couple of weeks, over the last number of months since October of last year, obviously, but even in the last in the last week or so, where there's perhaps been the appearance of a lull of fighting in other areas in and around Artyomsk and Avdiivka and Mariinka. There's still been very heavy fighting. So this one could speculate that what may have happened here is that the Russian military has either been tipped off or has gathered intelligence informing them that this hotel was housing foreign mercenaries, perhaps American mercenaries, and they've made a strike upon that hotel. I haven't been able to find a great deal of follow-up information on that yet, but I imagine more will be coming out today. Okay, just a little bit of an update on Progozhin and Wagner. I saw an article today that the Russian State Duma is commencing an investigation into state officials who left their post or their station or their role while the insurrection or attempted coup was in place. I guess the position there is that people in state roles who flee when that sort of event occurs perhaps don't have the backbone to hold those roles normally, and so that some perhaps clean out will be done. Now, I listened to Alexander Mercouris, who is a very informed, very insightful person, a person who I appreciate greatly, and listen to his daily updates all the time, as I suggest you do if you're interested in this topic of Ukraine and geopolitics in general. And he was mentioning one of John Helmer's articles on his Dancing with Bears website, where Helmer lays out that basically what happened with Progozhin was what was on the tin. What we saw is what happened. He attempted a coup, and within 24 hours it was shut down, and he didn't have support of the government, and he didn't have support of the military to make it successful. And this may well be it. I can't say that. I have no contacts on the ground to tell me Putin doesn't speak to me to tell me what's going on. But I can't help this niggling feeling that there's something else, something underlying this. And the reason that I feel like that is if I consider Prigozhin and Wagner, who have been fighting in Ukraine for a year and a half, who've been fighting before that, who've been fighting in Syria, who've been fighting in Africa, and Prigozhin has been the head of them. Prigozhin has got a lot of experience with sizing up targets and objectives and operations. I can't see how he would have embarked upon an attempted coup, an overthrow of Putin in Moscow with only 8,000 troops. So out of his 25 or 30,000 troops, only 8,000 were apparently accompanying him. Apparently very few, if any, of his officers, that they had decided to not support him on this operation. He, as has been stated by everyone, there was no political support. No one came out from the government to support him. There was no other military support evidenced for him. So I imagine that someone with that level of military experience, obviously high levels of tactical experience and strategic experience in terms of tackling an objective and wresting control from areas and strongholds of enemy forces. I just can't see how he would have seen what he was attempting as ever being successful. Maybe there is some simple answer to it. Maybe he never planned it to be successful. He knew he'd only get halfway, but he gambled that would be enough to get him to a point of leverage. But again, I don't see what he's achieved. If he had enough of fighting with Wagner, he could have just pulled out, could have sold his shares in it to someone else, gone and retired. What he's done has seemed to have now put him into exile in Belarus. Alexander Mercouris from the Duran mentions that the case against him, the legal case against him, has been not completely closed. It has been sort of retired for now, but could be reopened at any time if he was to travel back to Russia. So the situation he's in now doesn't seem as though it's been beneficial to him. He's in some respects, it appears, exiled from Russia. And how confident must he have been that Putin wouldn't just imprison him or execute him if things went wrong? Now, obviously, he and Putin have had a long relationship, and maybe it's something like that. Maybe that relationship is a lot stronger than we're really aware of, and Putin respects that long-term friendship or relationship, and that's why he's granted some leniency to Prigozhin. I know that Wagner was very popular in Russia, but still, the outcome of this, if it was a real failed coup attempt, has been that he's perhaps been exiled to Belarus, and his troops, or at least some of them, are going with him. And he maybe talk of him just being sent to Africa to go and lead Wagner in Africa. No repercussions. I don't know. I'm interested to hear in the comments if people have got thoughts or more information about it. Obviously, someone like John Helmer is an experienced person in the field of Russian politics and activity. It's far more experienced than me. But it just doesn't quite fit right. I would have thought he either wouldn't have embarked upon this, or he would have done so with the certainty of having both political and more military support to be able to move into Moscow and hold that position. Anyhow, okay. Just like the last topic here for tonight. China has reportedly become the top exporter of cars this year, surpassing Japan, and this has been due to a surge in sales to Russia. So clearly we see the ties between Russia and China growing and strengthening in the commercial sense. This is not what the West was hoping with their sanctions and original attempts to effectively sideline Russia. We can see that Russia and China are forming closer bonds, as is also evidenced by another report from today that the Taiwan Ministry of Defense is reporting that 2 Russian frigates were detected in Taiwanese defense zone today. Interceptor aircraft and anti-ship batteries were put on alert before the 2 Russian craft vacated the area. But again, this seems to be a strong message to Taiwan and to the United States that Russia is supporting China in the conflict or disagreement over Taiwan, and that Russia is actively supporting the one China policy, the one Chinese government over Taiwan and China. This is a policy which the United States at least pays lip service to, that they also recognise and have done so since 1972. And even just a week ago, Anthony Blinken travelled to China to discuss with Chinese diplomats exactly this point and try to de-escalate the situation with China, even sort of publicly announced again that the United States do recognise the one China policy. Of course, this was somewhat undermined in the days following when Biden then referred to as Xi as a dictator and claimed that Xi had no idea or awareness of what was going on with the Chinese spy balloon fiasco from a few weeks ago. Yeah, interesting. I think it's a very strong message for Russian frigates to be making manoeuvres in that area, right alongside Taiwan. Reports have come out that Taiwan have said that if they find Chinese craft or Chinese airships encroaching within a defined zone, that they will treat it as being an attack and will attack them. So. Even with the Americans perhaps attempting to diffuse things slightly with Blinken's trip to Beijing, it now seems as though the Chinese and Russians are still keeping pressure on Taiwan, perhaps seeing weakness in the US at the moment, and believing that the US is not going to be able to fight two conflicts at once, support the Ukrainian one and support Taiwan if that were required. Who knows? But it's an interesting one to see. So, hey, anyhow, just a short one tonight. Thank you if you've watched it here. Please subscribe. I'll be back in the next day or so with some of the longer ones and some of the battle updates from what's happening in Ukraine.